output. Isha, please start.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's lecture, Fundamentals of Public Policy by Professor Rabindranath, where he'll be talking about group theory and elite theory. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Please share my PPT that I have sent. Yes, so that is today's lecture topic is elite theory, group theory, and public policy formulation. So we have gone through some certain basics of public policy formulation yesterday, and then we came to the systems theory. But today we focus on the elite theory and group theory in public policy formulation. I will start with elite theory. Please, next. Elite theory. Let me give you an introduction. I hope some of you know elite theory. Many of you know. Elite theory, basically, it was developed in the hands of Gaetano Mosca, Robert Mitchell, and Wilfred Pareto. And later on, it came to, of course, Baswell was one of the proponents. 20th century. That's when was there who developed the theory in a better way. And Gaetano Mosca, Mitchell's, Pareto, they had their own understanding. Of course, Robert Mitchell's ideas is known as iron law of oligarchy. That is very famous quote. Many people, whenever the organization, communist organization or other organizations are being talked of, they talk about this iron law of oligarchies everywhere. Now, let me just quote some paragraph from Mosca's ruling class, chapter 2, and the name of that chapter 2 is also ruling class. He says in that chapter, it's starting just, there is one line that I have not taken. But after that, it is like this. In all societies, right from societies that are very meagerly developed and have barely attained the throne of civilization, down to the most advanced and powerful societies, two classes of people appear. A class that rules and a class that is ruled. The first class, always the less numerous, performs all political functions, monopolizes power, and enjoys the advantages that power brings, whereas the second, the more numerous class, is directed and controlled by the first in a manner that is now more or less legal, now more or less arbitrary and violent, and supplies the first in appearance, at least with the instrumentalities that are essential to the vitality of political organization. This is one sentence, but he has two sentences. But in these two sentences, Mosca has basically summarized the whole of elite theory. All these Mosca, Mitchell's, Pareto, they were all of the 19th century philosopher, basically, political scientists or sociologists or philosopher, whatever it may be. But they were all from Italy. So in Italy, they developed this in 19th century, mid-19th century, or later half of the 19th century, they developed this theory, and they during that period they are telling that I think you can understand that that time Marx was also in the European scenario. So Marx died in 1881 or 83, whatever, most probably 1883. Anyway, so during this period, Mosca, Mitchell's, Pareto, they were talking about this elite theory. Now, their main proposition was that two classes are there. One class is that rules, another class is that rule. And the first class is, of course, less numerous, minority class, and the second class is more numerous. It is immersed people are in that class. So these are two classes, and power is always held by this first class, I mean the class that rules. And willy-nilly is the second class that accepts that imposition or implementation of power by the first class. Second, next slide, please. Now, the basic point of it, what are the basic point of this elite theory? That first is that society is divided into two groups of people, ruling minority and the ruled majority. That is the first thing. Two groups of people are there, ruling minority and ruled majority. Second is that the legitimate political power to take and impose decisions valid to the whole society is wielded by the ruling minority. This power is legitimate. In fact, the decision, the imposition of power that the ruling class does, that is basically legitimate power. It is valid to the whole society. And somehow, why it is by the people, what is legitimacy? I have already told that David Hill defined legitimacy as worthiness of an order to be upheld. So, if an order is worthy, if a system, if a ruling class is worthy of ruling, if the people think that, then it will be legitimate. So legitimacy, that means it is so legitimate that ruled majority always think that the ruling minority, they are worthy of holding power, and naturally the power is withheld by the ruling minority, and that the power, it's not that this ruling minority does not change the position, but basically the movement, the mobility is very slow. From one group to another group, it slowly, very slowly moves. So majority, the ruling minority, that withholds the power for a long time. The main objective of the elite theories then was to explain the fact that in every society, most of the existing resources, economic, cultural, or otherwise, are concentrated in the hands of small minority, which use them to exercise power over the mass people. So there are sources, policy, public policy is done to allocate the resources. Basically, a course of action, why people take the course of action, or why there is a problem. Always the problem crops up with the resources, allocation of resources. Now, if there is no, I mean, you can think of Oros Pathor of Sati. In Oros Pathor, it was that touchstone that field. It was shown that the gold has got so much value, but when Oros Pathor, the hero of that film, the clerk who gets a touchstone, and whenever he touches that iron with that touchstone, even the metro beams, the iron beams of metro railway, huge beams that become gold. So there was a huge rush in the market that gold price is falling. What that was being told in politics, if you take it, that only when the resources are scarce, then people rush for that resource. And then there is the need for authoritative allocation. If I always talk about my Gulabag dust in Gulabag, it is red dust in Gulabag, go to my department, path to my department, and it's full of red dust. Now, it's nobody takes up this red dust because that is got no value, no value added. But if it is told in the advertisement that it has got certain medicinal values, then people will rush in for that it can, I mean, it can cure some incurable diseases like corona or something like that. Let us not talk about specific. But then the people will rush in for that. So that way, always scarcity in resources, that leads to authority, that needs authoritative allocation of values. And of course, the minority, they every society, elite theorists are telling that these resources, economic, cultural, or other, whatever it may be, they are captured by they're concentrated in the hands of a small minority. Cultural monopoly is also there. I mean, Santali songs, that is very good songs. Very good songs are there. But you won't find that in mainstream discourse. In mainstream, I mean, in TV, how many days you have listened to a Santali song? But large number of people go by the Santali culture. So monopolize this culture, the cultural resource, academic resource, or whatever other resources that all are concentrated in the hands of a small minority, and they use them to exercise power over the mass people. Now, this minority governs even beyond the formal constitutional structure, and this has a great impact upon the functioning of the democracy. I mean, it's in the party also, in the political party, functioning of democracy in political party, authoritarian system. Of course, there is always a minority that rules. But in democracy, we always think that there is a party, a competition is there. So party leadership comes from a competitive course of action. But ultimately, it is elite theorists are telling that in political party also, these political resources, that is also monopolized by minority group. So going beyond the formal or constitutional structure, minority governs everywhere. And this has a great impact upon the functioning of the democracy, whether it's in party politics or in running the state or in allocating the resources. This is the basic point that is electoral theorists are trying to tell, that minority governs even beyond the formal or constitutional structure. Next slide, please. Now, who are the elite? Now, there are three connotations. We are talking about elite. Now, elite is a term. It cannot be. There is no plural word like elites. You can find elites, but that means economic elite, political elite, cultural elite. When we talk about conglomeration of various group of elite, then we can call it elites. So, three connotations of the term elite. That is, it can be positive, negative, or neutral. The best Pareto used the term in a positive sense. It is basically, I also found, I put it in the net and found that it's Latin root in eligere that I have written. And from that, elite came as a French word. So elite is a French word. And Italy, of course, just beside France. So Pareto took this French word and he took a synonym of that elite, aristocracy. That means aristocracy, which according to him was the best. So for Wilfredo Pareto, it was elite. It's very good. I mean, what in the positive sense? It's some capable persons who are capable by who are skilled, capable, meaning that they are educated, they have got wealth, they have got health as well as health, wealth, education, and in every sense they possess some more things that the masses in mass people do not possess. So that way, they are capable of making decisions than the in mass people. But Mosca didn't agree with this connotation, and it basically implies a eulogy. And according to him, that Mosca says that it doesn't deserve such type of things. He found that a ruling class more proper. He used that a ruling class and also give the theory of political formulas. According to that political formulas, ruling class justifies their rule by theories or principles based on beliefs or ethical systems. Those are accepted by those who are ruled. and maintain that power position even using violence if it is necessary over the majority of the population. So first thing is that this ruling class, they maintain their power position uh, by uh, by justifying their rule by certain theories or principles. This is you can have many more theories like this, like in sociology, you can have socialization, how this uh, legitimacy is created by political socialization. Tell that basically socialization, they maintain this position, legitimize their position. Also, you can think that they legitimize their, you can come to the Gramscian theory that basically leads up to hegemony. So that all the things, I mean, educational institutions, civil society as such. Other civil society is those organizational, institutional network that exist in a society without the tutelage of the state. Without the tutelage of the state, if a network of, say, of voluntary organizations exist, then we can call that the civil society. And civil society, in that civil society, you can have market, you can have NGOs, and many other things. Now, these areas, they somehow, for the uh, for their existence, own existence, this civil society tries to hegemonize the dominance of the ruling class, and that was the civil society basically upholds the political rule of the state. So that was, you can go by that. Moscow also talks about the legitimacy in that way, that it maintains certain theories or principles based upon beliefs or ethical systems. That ethical systems, those are accepted by the, those systems are accepted by the mass of people of the society. They think that this ethics, we should go by that. For example, if a person dies of hunger, uh, in that case, it can be, there is an ethical proposition maybe there that he didn't have the capability. It is because of market force. The in the market, he doesn't have the capability to go for employment, and that's why he remained unskilled, and that's why he couldn't get the job. So this ethical system, that on the basis of on the belief system, the ethical system that is created by the ruling class, on the basis of that, they maintain their power. But sometimes they are challenged, and if necessary, Moscow says that they use violence against the majority of the population, and that way they either legitimize their power by creating or maintaining the ethical base of the society, ethical base or belief pattern in the society, or they may sometimes use the power, use the force if necessary. Next slide, please. Now, Robert Mitchell's used the term in some way, its negative sense, because he said iron rule of oligarchy. Going by that rule, any organization, whatever democratic nature or root it may have, will eventually or inevitably develop oligarchic tendencies. So Moscow and Mitchell's, if you go by them, other than Pareto, Moscow and Mitchell's both use the elite theory, elite term, elite connotation of elite, in a negative sense, that it's an iron rule of oligarchy. A few people in any organization, even if the organization it remains, it has got certain democratic nature, it will eventually and inevitably develop certain oligarchic tendency. That means a few people, they will ultimately go to the top, and they will hold the power, and all other people in the organization will please them to get the benefits. So this is the iron rule of oligarchy that was told by, that was proposed by Robert Mitchell's in 19th century. And so that way, Moscoviches, they were, they used the term elite in for pejorative sense, in a basically in a negative sense. And the third part, of course, is the neutral sense. In the contemporary world, the term elite is mostly used in the neutral way. In any group that remains at the top of the social and political hierarchy, it's not that when we talk about the elite, we do not mean that they are, in fact, the labor, in particular labor, he can go to the top and after a certain time and he becomes a political elite. So by this term elite, in a neutral sense, we mean that to remain at the top of a social or political hierarchy. Now, if you take this view, then every institution or organization, even in the most democratic country, has elites in the structure, because in every organization there is an upper layer, and in the upper layer there are some people, and you can call them as the elites in the structure. Next slide, please. Now we come to the public policy and the elite. Yesterday, third or fourth slide, I gave you the reference to this particular slide. The public policy reflects values and norms of the government. That is also the view of the elite theory. That I have
यहाँ पर दिल्ली में मिलता है. She doesn't like it. It's not like she doesn't like it, but the thing is that इसका खर्चा
Sorry, sir. Yeah.
it's all right. Anyway, the public policy reflects here. I have quoted some most probably African author, African political scientist who published an article in International Journal of Political Science, and I have shared it with you. And a talk overview of the approaches to the study of public policy is very good article, and there you can get all the three: group approach, elite theory, and also systems analysis. So you can get all the three, but there he has maintained that he has told that Adam has mentioned that the essential argument of elite theory, that is very important, that when policy formulation, the essential argument of the elite theory is that public policy is not determined by the demands and actions of the people or the masses. It's not determined, but rather by ruling elite whose preferences are carried into effect by political officials and agencies, thereby the bureaucrats. So it's not determined by the demands and actions of the people or the masses, but rather by the ruling elite whose preferences are carried into effect by political officials and the agencies like bureaucracy. In other words, according to this theory, the elite simply believe that they alone have the ability to determine the policies to promote the welfare of the masses and implement them. Thus, policies flow downward from the elite to the masses. It's a pyramidal structure. In elite theory, you have seen the diagram. I'll show you the diagram. Dykes diagram, Robert Dykes diagram, R. Dykes diagram, I'll show. But it's a pyramidal structure. That at the upper echelon, you will find that the policy formulation elites who are formulating the policies. Then you will find certain agencies for implementing the policies, and at the lowermost level, the people, the en masse population who are impacted by the policies. So this is the pyramidal diagram, and in that pyramid, the upper echelon people always think that they have the ability, they have the capability to guide the masses. So that's why they think that they are able to determine the policies to promote the welfare of the masses and to implement them. So they should make the policy. Then if you think of a formulation and implementation structure of public policy in accordance with the elite theory, it will be pyramidal in nature. Next slide, please.
PT, please change the slide.
Elite theory of policy process. This was adopted by Thomas Dye, Irony of Democracy, in 2000. I said Robert Dye, so Thomas Dye, Irony of Democracy. In that book, you can find this ruling elite at the top of the diagram. You find ruling elite. Then administrators, in Indian case, the IS, and all the central services people, and also state services administrators. They are the next level elite of policy implementation elite. And third level, you can get the masses. So this is the way in whole theory. This is elite theory is very centralized. It has got a centralization bias. I mean, you can find that ruling elite in the top echelon and mass in the at the grassroots level, and they have no control over the thing. The policies are being formulated or the policies are being implemented. So it's not that at certain times, of course, two things are there. One is that there's in certain cases they may threaten the society with their resistance. But when the status quo, when such status quo is challenged in any society, then the ruling elite, they just accommodate certain very little demands according to elite theory. They just accommodate the basic things, basic demands, so that the stability remains and their power position also is upheld. So once this is being done, then they forget about the masses. So masses always remains at the lower echelon of the diagram, and ruling elite remains at the top. Next slide, please. Now the limitations of this theory is that assumes. What are the limitations? First, as its limitations is that it assumes the society is highly structured and very stratified. And limitations because it's a highly structured, stratified, and there are certain people, elite people are there. So these elite people are in the upper structure and lower structure, there are masses. So this is a high structured and stratified society. They assume the society in that way, and concludes that public policy mostly reflects elite interests. And if the demands of the masses are mitigated, that is for the desire of the elite to provide welfare to the masses. If the masses get some goals, that is because elite wants to, desires to give certain, provide certain welfare to the masses. That is the thing. First thing is that this highly structured and stratified society doesn't exist everywhere. You can think about the in the structure, I mean, diffuse societies in our society, in Rixian town, so it can be called as prismatic society. You will find this high structured thing because elite structure remains undeveloped or at the developing stage. You know, those who have not come through Rixian, those students who have not come through Frederick's ecological paradigm. Then for them, I am telling that Riggs proposed that there are two systems, two societies, two types of societies. His prismatic model talks about two societies basically. One is industrial, another is one is agraria, the primitive society, undeveloped society. Is in here he in fact equates agraria with undeveloped, undevelopment or underdevelopment. And there is industrial, that is industrial society, which is highly developed, which is modern, which is stratified. And whereas in agricultural society, the roles are jumbled up, roles are conglomerated. The executive is he in a traditional society, the committee head, he is the executive also in the society, tribal society, or he's also religious head of the society. So that way, many roles are conglomerated in one role. So that is the in an undeveloped society, roles are conglomerated, and whenever the development, they equated leagues, and they put that also Armand also, Gabriel Armand also. Both of them were writing at the same time. 1965, 1957, comparative political systems was written by Gabriel Armand. So both of them, Riggs and Armand, they were writing at the same time on comparative politics. And Riggs made on 1962. Riggs made comparative economics with Picasso. That was very famous. Now, Riggs's theory was that modernity or development, that is differentiation of nothing but differentiation of roles. That was the view of Gabriel Armand. So, in the industrial, that means in industrial society, the more agrarian society goes to the industrial society, the roles becomes differentiated, it becomes specialized, and whenever it becomes specialized, it becomes differentiated from other roles. So, but in between this industrial and agrarian, there is a pyramidal society. I mean, this pyramidal society, sorry, not prismatic society. I'm very sorry. The prismatic society. This prismatic society, in this prismatic society, what happens that in a prism, if you make light pass through a prism, then all this the light becomes differentiated, diffracted, and differentiated from by colors, 7 colors. So in that society, because in this prismatic society, in this in between agraria and industrial, there is a prismatic society where the roles are neither diffused nor differentiated. So now, mostly the undeveloped developing society, if you go by Fredericks, then we will have certain diffused roles, diffused structures, and they have not yet developed elite system. I mean, what the elites are not still clear in an undeveloped or developed society. In case of India also, we think sometimes we feel these are there are certain elites. You can find some, I mean, gurus, Maulavis, to whom the people go into this world, to today's India. People go to gurus. So Ramdev Baba, he becomes a political elite. So who is elite? Baba Ramdev. So this type of Ravi Shankar, I mean, not Ravi Shankar Prasad, but I'm talking about the guru Ravi Shankar. This type of people, they also become religious. These are not their elite becomes a religious elite in traditional society who are religious elite. That also in our Indian society also they remain as elite in political elite. So here religious elite and political elite they become mixed up. In such a society, it is difficult to arrive at the conclusion. I mean that elites. What elites? It's very difficult to identify. You don't know about the name of certain religious person or certain people, tribal leader, Mahendra Singh Thakar. Like this, the farmer. He is is a more political elite. So these type of things that in such a society, it's very difficult to tell, identify who are the elites. And if you cannot identify the elite, then how can you tell that they are determining the policy and they are making the policy? So that is the first thing, first limitation of this society. Second is that stability of the system therefore depends on elite sharing a consensus about the fundamental values of the underlying system. So this is it is presumed that there is a fairly consensus on the fundamental values underlying the system. But in many cases in this underdeveloped system or developing political society, we find that the fundamental values are not being shared by all people in the society. So in such a society where the fundamental values, the values of, elites in the elites, there are elites, you can tell there are not elites in Dalits, Dalit elite. You can find Gopal Guru. If he tells anything, that becomes a news. So his values are, of course, are not to the prime ministers. He doesn't share the values of the BJP people or leaders of the many other political parties. So that way, I can, but in this underdeveloped or developing society, its fundamental values underlying a system are being shared by, fairly shared by all the elite people, or there is a consensus of fundamental values among the elites, political elites, economic elites, cultural elites, all of them they share the same fundamental values. That is not the case in developing society or undeveloped society. So in that case, the elite theory, how much it is applicable, that is very difficult to judge. Now, Anadi has mentioned Nicolas Sarkozy. I haven't got through, but he has cited that I have quoted him. According to Nicolas Sarkozy, this model may be the most charming to political public administrators. Public administrators always take up this theory as charming to very much relevant to their theory. They are relevant to their policy formulation or policy implementation. So that way, Nicolas Sarkozy thinks that this model may be the most charming to public administrators. Next, group theory will be coming. Now, let us come to the group theory in policy formulation. Group theory of policy formulation views public policy is an input. Now, this is a completely separate. The first one was elite, and it is pluralist. Elite theory is a monolithic. It talks about a monolithic layer, monolithic structure. But group theory is a pluralist. Talks about the pluralist structure. So group theory tells that group theory of policy formulation views public policy is an end product of continuous and infinite numbers of group struggles going on in the society. Public policy attempts an equilibrium in this group struggle at any given moment, and it represents balance which the contending factions or groups constantly strive to win in their favor. Now, what does there? I'll come to the details, but there is a continuous. We do not know. We do not. We do not consciously watch. But there is always a continuous struggle, and infinite. There are competition. There is a continuous competition of infinite numbers of groups in the society, and this competition sometimes going to the level of struggle going on in the society. And public policy is just an attempt to make an equilibrium of this in this group struggle at any given moment. And it represents a balance which the contending factors or groups constantly strive to win their favor. So all the groups are trying to strive to win in their favor. Every group is trying to win the game, and they want to get the advantage, get the benefits. But then some groups win, some groups lose. Now, public policy makes a balance of these contending factions, and so that no groups, in such a way that what should I say, that status quo is maintained. Somehow the legitimacy is upheld and the status quo is maintained. That way, public policy attains an equilibrium with groups. Groups always try to fix the public policy in their favor at the policy commission. They try, in our case, it is called interest groups. In India, it is called interest groups. I told that in America, it's public lobbies. And they always try to fix the public policy in their favor. So many interest groups are there. Interest groups, business groups, not that only the businessmen have their interest groups. The environmentalists have their interest groups. The film lovers, they have their interest groups. The football players or football play lovers, they have their own interest group. The cricket lovers, they have got their interest group. So they always try to fix the public policy in their favor at the policy formulation level. You can see that you just think that after the India-Pakistan cricket match was fixed, there's enormous ways. I saw that people were talking about the public TV as Subramaniam Sami, he tweeted, and so many people were talking that why India should play with Pakistan when Pakistan is in proxy war with India. So they should not go on with that. So this is the way. Now they have got definite interest group. They have a definite interest group, and that interest group was represented by, of course, Subramanian Sami, and some other interest group was represented by, of course, our Saurabh Ganguly. So that way, ability of a particular group in doing so depend on its power to counteract the abilities of other groups. Since Joy Shah is more powerful, of course, the son of Amit Shah. So Saurabh Ganguly is hitting up the match with Pakistan. That ultimately won. So groups always try to fix the public policy in their favor, but ability of a particular group in doing so depend on its power to counteract the abilities of other groups. Next slide, please. So who are the proponents? After long back, this is 2021. So 114 years back, or 113 years back, in 1908, Arthur Bentley wrote the process of government. He gave, I've quoted from Arthur Bentley's idea that in his process of government, he wrote that basically two things he mentioned. One is that politics is a continuous process. First, continuous process. Groups and group behaviors are the raw materials of politics. And it cannot be treated, it cannot be studied in isolation. That means this politics should be studied, this interest, plus group activity should be studied. It's a continuous process. Now, he wrote in his book that all phenomena of government are phenomena of groups pressing one another, forming one another, and pushing out new groups and group representatives, the organs or agencies of government, to mediate the adjustment. So all phenomena of government, all incidents of government are phenomena of groups. It's not government means phenomena of groups pressing one another. Everybody's, it's like putting some, marbles in a bottle, and if you just shake it, then that will happen? That is he's talking about pressing one another, pressing one another, forming one another, and pushing out new groups and group representatives. The organs are agencies of government to mediate the adjustment. So every time these groups are pushing one another, form one another. So one group is formed, another group becomes extinct, a new group is formed, and then pushing out new groups and group representatives. The organs, group representatives mean thereby the group leaders, some new committees, now new leaders. The organs or agencies of government. The bureaucracies, of course, the bureaucracy is important unit of these groups to mediate this adjustment. Now, these groups, they are told to mediate the adjustment. It is only as we isolate these group activities, determine the representative values, and get the whole process stated in terms of them, that we approach to a satisfactory knowledge of government. So it is only as we isolate these group activities, if we isolate these group activities from the continuous process and determine their representative values and get the whole process stated in terms of them, then we approach to a satisfactory knowledge of government. So group activities, their representative values, and the whole process, how these group activities is going on. If we can isolate them, then only we can find the knowledge, satisfactory knowledge of government. So government, according to him, is nothing but group activities, determining the representative values, and of course, a whole process of struggle among the groups and group representatives. And on the basis of that, government is formed to mediate the adjustment among the groups, competing groups or struggling groups. Bentley's ideas were pursued and made popular by David Truman after World War II. He provided the pluralist theory of politics. And here you can come to, I think, some other people, Gabriel Amand also came to the articulation theory. But pluralist theory was made by Dahl. Robert Dahl was one of the pluralist theories. So David Truman, after World War II, he provided the pluralist theory of politics. And this is a pluralist theory where there is no single group determining politics. There are infinite number of groups are there in society, and they are struggling with each other, and they form, every time they form a new group or some other groups become extinct, they push out new groups, group representatives, and in fact, the government is there just to make an adjustment among this in this group struggle, so that the competition doesn't go too long to become a fight or absolutely goes to the whole society goes to an extinction. So in that way, mediate the adjustment. Next slide, please. The basic propositions. What are the basic propositions of group theory? One is that group is nothing but a structure. You will find that later on, other people, type was most probably or someone else, I'll see that. But they have told that there's a little confusion in the definition of groups and interests. What is groups and what is interest, and what is the relation to politics? That is the ideas. But group is nothing but if you can understand what they are telling, that group is nothing but a structure of shared mass activities. When we form a group when we share certain values. So we share certain activity with some other people, like a film club, a football club. We become active in making films or watching films, or we become active in Mohan Bagan Football Club or East Bengal Football Club or some other Goa Football Club, whatever it may be. We become interested in football club, and in doing so, we go to watch the football club and to cheer the players from the field. This type of things, these shared mass activities, uh, if it is structured, then it becomes a group. So group is nothing but the structure of shared mass activities. Groups and group theories that was told by Arthur are the raw materials of politics. And group theory is a tool for inquiry into the collective and social action. So it doesn't talk about certain method, but it is a tool for inquiry. It is really there. If you go for you go to the books of Arthur Bentley or David Truman, you won't find a good method to follow how this group theory can be implemented in policy formulation. But this is a tool for inquiry into the collective and social action. Now, I have quoted Micah, some personality, Bentley Truman, and the study of groups. He was some Columbia University professor. He wrote this article. I didn't share with you it, but anyway, you can go to the internet and find it. So that's why I mentioned the name of the article. There is no overarching public. The second basic proposition is that there is no overarching public interest or common. Public policy, we always mythify that public policy talks about certain public interest or common theories. There's no overarching public interest or common. There never was one. Truman told that. In fact, he quoted that Truman 1971. I put it there. So there is no overarching public interest or common good. There never was one. Any government is, in Truman's view, functionally constituted by some arrangement of differentiated interests of varying interests. So basically, not for providing certain common good, but they have differentiated interests of varying intensity, and in fact, at that moment of time, that differentiated interests of having intensity has won the legitimacy from the people. That's why they are in the public policy formulation group. So it's not that people thought that common good will be done or public interest will be served by this group, but their interests, these groups have got large supporters, and they represent certain interests of varying intensity, differentiated interest of varying intensity, and that interest is being supported by large number of population in the society, and that's why they are in a public formulation, public policy formulation group. So it's not for public interest, not for common good, and it's basically functionally constituted some element of differentiating interests of varying interests. Third is that, this is the second. Third is, according to Bentley, habit diagram, which explains as the rules of the game, loosely governing social practices, give some structure to the activity of a group in pursuit of its interests. Now, since he doesn't have any method, how could you know, if you find numerous number of groups in a continuous process, then what is the research method? How can you do the research on them? Then Bentley comes to the point that it's a tool for inquiry, and you can find the habit background. I quote unquote habit background and the roots of the game. For example, he himself has mentioned that before the Second World War, before the Geneva Conventions, which largely dominate, Geneva Conventions largely dominate the war practices now. That who will be treated as war prisoner, how they will be treated, and all these things. But before Geneva Convention was there, widely shared values in war was in practice. Shared values were in practice. So that way, there are certain habit background, rules of the game, always there. And these rules of the game, by these rules of the game, the groups fight among each other, or compete with each other. Now, this habit background and rules of the game are the loosely governing social practices, and they give structure to the activity of the group in pursuit of its interests. That how the group is being structured, how do you know that if you go by the rules of the game, if you go by the habit background, then you can find that this is the way the group is formed in a particular society. And this is the loosely governing social practices. If you don't have the I mean, there's no rule, there is no law, there is certain habit background and rules of the game. Everybody who comes to in the field, he knows that this is the rule here. So that way they go on. Next slide, please. These are the basic propositions. Now, when it comes to group theory in public policy formulation, public policy, what do they tell these group theories? We have seen that what were the basic propositions. Now, public policy is a temporary point of compromise reached in the course of competition between mosaics of numerous interest groups with cross-cutting memberships. It is not that, let me tell you, that it's not that groups, it could have been, I could have shown that if you, I mean, this is like a circle, I mean, a circle going certain areas of another circle. So there are certain overlapping part of 2 circles, 3 circles, 4 circles. So these are the mosaics of numerous interest groups with cross-cutting members. I'm a Bengali. I'm a Hindu. Another Hindu, Bihari Hindu, is Hindu, cross-cutting this membership, but he's not Bengali. So this type of things, members, there's mosaics of numerous interest groups with cross-cutting memberships. That is the thing. That way, I can show you in a way this is formed like this way. Let me just show you. So this is the thing. That way, this I mean this super very
It's visible.
so that way the circles are continuously overlapping these areas. The groups are also cross-cutting memberships. They are also visible. They are also I mean overlapping. And this temporary in this public policy, there is a temporary point of compromise. Public policy is nothing but a temporary compromise. This compromise may be lost. We go by systems analysis that once this policy comes, immediately the people who supported the policy, they may tell that we didn't want this, we want that. So this is a temporary point of compromise reached in the course of competition between mosaics of numerous interest groups with cross-cutting membership. That is the definition of public policy in accordance with group theory. Now, this locus of power in elite theory, elite theory also, elites change their position, but very slowly. It's not that elite theories never told that elites do not change their position. Elites also change their position, but very slowly. The Amitabh Bachchan remained the cultural elite in our society for so many times, so much time. So that is, you can understand that he has become the elite of this cultural elite of this society, Indian society. So this is the change. It changes, but very slowly the mobility comes into action. But in group theory, it's told that locus of power changes from one point to another depending on which group has been successful. Today, this group is successful in making the public policy. So tomorrow, another group becomes successful in public policy. So this locus of power changes from one group to another group. And depending on which group has been successful in drawing the policy to its advantage. If this group has become successful in drawing advantage to its to its favor, to its own. In that case, after some time, they become powerful, and all of the other groups they lose to the particular lose their I mean lose in competing with competing making the formulating the policy with that particular group. But that is not fixed. After some time, this locus of power once again changes. As the situation arises, competition becomes a new group comes in, and naturally, depending on that group competition, new group becomes successful, and locus of power becomes changed. Accordingly, power to determine public policy direction also changes from time to time. So today, the public policy, it is group theory says that today the public policy direction is in that way. That doesn't mean that it will go on for long. After some time, this direction will be changed. Once this power, this locus of power changes, this public policy direction will also be changed. So the power base in the society is fluid in nature. Power base, there is no fixed static power base in the society. It is continuously changing from one position to another position. And public policy is in reality a temporary equilibrium reached in the course of the intergroup struggle. So this is a temporary equilibrium. No static equilibrium can be reached at. Basically, it's a temporary equilibrium reached in the course of intergroup struggle from this group to that group. So that way, the power base in the society, group theory in public policy formulation says that power base in the society is fluid in nature and public policy in reality temporary equilibrium reached in the course of intergroup struggle. Next slide. Now, how do the groups influence the public policy? There are certain, of course, there are certain components. These are the I have quoted Andy. In fact, they have these have been Robert Dahl. They have summarized Arthur Bentley, Truman. Then these people also, in some way, Gabriel Lamont, all these people have been summarized. Since power to dominate policy decisions is dependent on group solidarity and power, the dynamics of policy process is expected to be more vibrant and fierce in rural societies than in homogeneous ones. That in democratic society, of course, in democratic society, you get heterogeneous interests. Homogeneous society, homogeneous rural society, talks rural society, by rural society, of course, mainly we mean democratic society. Robert Dahl also talked about this rural society. So this is that society that represents that society that upholds rural interests. So in rural society, there are many groups who are competing with each other, and they have got diverse interests. So in rural society, the competition, the dynamics, and the policy process is expected to be more vibrant. But in homogeneous society, I mean, by homogeneous society, you can find that authoritarian society, where, for example, in Chinese society or previously USSR, the groups who are fighting with each other, that has also been, those groups have also been proposed by the Communist Party, that this will be peasants group, you will fight from peasants group, you will fight from laborers group, and you will fight from intelligentsia. So these groups are being made also. That is not fierce. People know that ultimately they represent the same interests, same values. So they lose the interest in and the vibrant the policy process, dynamics of policy process loses vibrancy, and it's not very fierce. But in the rural society, since these diverse interests are represented by groups, the policy process becomes more vibrant and fierce. And the ability of the group to tilt the policy in its favor depends on many factors. First is wealth. Wealth is an important thing in in politics. Without wealth, in every society, that if you want to mobilize people, you need wealth. Without wealth, you cannot. Uh, Long back, Mill talked about those like, who can be in the political process. That means who can have the voting right, the people who have education and wealth. So minimum amount of wealth must be there. So it is needed that in politics you need wealth and to mobilize the people in your favor some way, because you will have to make that advertisement. You will have to put clippings in the media, or you will have to uh, have the transport fare to go to the people who are in power. So that way, wealth is needed. But only wealth cannot do this. You should have organizational skill. Organizational skill meaning there that you should have the network capability. That how these people become members. You will have to make more and more people member of this your group. So that the organizational skill focuses on the network capability. That you'll have to make networks with more and more people. So that is the organizational skill. And third is leadership quality. Leadership. There are certain people who have the charisma, like Indira Gandhi was there, Jyoti Basu was there. I mean, they have the charismatic leader. Churchill, so Lenin, they have the leadership quality. But this leader, I'm not talking about this type of charismatic, big type of charismatic leadership, but leadership quality is very much important. Not only you may have the networking capacity, but people will have to admit that this person has got the capability to deal with our interests. So people will have to accept someone as the leader of that group. So that is the leadership quality, and that leadership quality, and not only that, the members, but also whenever the leader will be representing the organization to the policy formulators or the lobbyists, they will be representing the group, interest group to the policy formulators. Policy formulators will have to also understand that, yes, if I make an understanding or MOU with the memorandum of understanding with this person, then it will be followed by others. So that is the leadership quality. And then bargaining skill, not only the leadership quality, you have to bargain that if you give this, bargaining skill is very important. It's not the bargaining skill it depends in which society, in which time, which moment, at which time period of history, bargaining skill is being done. But leadership depends upon the bargaining skill as well. Now, yeah, I have put it, that's why I didn't, but you can access to decision makers, or in Nigerian parlance, connection. In Indian parlance also, this is called connection. He has got connection. So connection to the decision maker, very important. That he has got some connection to the leader, the group members or the group leader must have some connection to some way, for example, so due to some ethnic connection, it may have certain school connection, college connection. That's why to tell that it's very important to go through a very good university or good college, because you will have certain friends who will be in good position, and that connection will matter in future. So because they will be decision making powers. So that is the action to connection, and of course the modicum of luck. That means some way it clicked that you wanted to, and that person also wanted to make the friendly gesture with you. So that is a modicum of luck. These are the components in influencing public policy when the groups are struggling with each other to get the policy formulation in their favor. These are the important factors that become the basic components in influencing public policy. Next slide, please. Now I'm coming to the last slide. This is basically limitations of and of course the last part is that the importance of pluralism. The lack of clear, this has been told by many persons that this is lack of clear definition of, and he also has mentioned that lack of clear definition of group and interest. While Bentley's groups as a relation between men, a process of adding man to man, Truman defines it as a collection of individuals who have some characteristic in common. So, what is group? That is not very clear. A relation between I have proposed to one, and I think that this is a little bit harsh critique on the group theories. Some way I could understand that they told that the structure of shared interest is a group, shared activity is a group. So whenever they are talking about groups as a relation between men or adding men to man or collection of individuals, basically they are talking about certain activities, shared activities, the way I have defined the group in accordance with the group theories. So it's a little bit harsh critique that they are, though they don't have the clear definition, but that another point of criticism is that this interest, how would you define the interest? Interest, what is an interest? They're very vague about defining the interest. So interest is in what way? In what way Bentley or Truman, they define. In fact, if you go by Hammond also, he has talked about interest groups. He has talked about both types of associational, non-associational, institutional, and anonymous interest groups. But what is specifically interest? That is, in fact, that you have to assume, of course you can assume that a group pursuing certain definite objective, that becomes an interest. But that is not very clearly told by neither by this pluralist, neither by Dahl, nor by Bentley, nor by Truman. So, and now then the third critique comes that what is its interest? What is the relation between interest and politics? But here also, let it be fair with the group theories. The group theories talk about that they talk that interests are very important because on the basis of interest, the fair struggle is going on. So everyone tries to get certain, achieve certain. You can tell that material or immaterial. I mean, you can define interest in that way. Material or immaterial values for which human beings desire. So these are the basic interests, and for that people fight. The groups are fighting. Groups are, and so that is the basic point of interest. So this point of that lack of definition and how it is related, that is not very logical criticism. But it's true that interest has not been very clearly defined in neither in Bentley nor in Truman, the major proponents of group theories. And second is that it leaves out the individuals and society in general. It is very valid criticism. That ultimately groups are composed of certain individuals. But individuals do not talk about individuals. They always talk about groups. They leave the group theory leaves out the individuals and society in their analysis. And the role of particular individuals is a very important variable. The certain particular individuals, they, in fact, at certain point of history, they, for example, Gandhi, this type of people, they play a very important role in the conglomerating the interests of the society and make the whole society united. So this in the role of the individuals and the society, that has been absolutely left out in good theory. But the good thing that Dahl observes, Dahl being a pluralist, he observes that in pluralism, that is the scope of this theory, no single group has monopoly over all these resources. Elite theories that elites have the monopoly over the resources, but in group theory, you won't find the monopoly. No single group has monopoly over all these resources. So it is very difficult for any single group to dominate in formulation of public policies for long. So that is the thing that is in public policy, no single group will be able to dominate. And with this, I finish my presentation. And of course, let me take a long breath so that you can ask a long question, and during that time, I can take a long breath. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabin sir, for this, very comprehensive and, I'm hopeful that the students really learned from it. You were really very comprehensive and very brief today. And you have cleared more of my doubts also regarding these two theories. So the floor is open for discussion. Please feel free to ask.
Uh, Thank you, sir. It was really very elaborative lecture of yours, and we could clear our doubts with your enlightening lecture. Sir, one of my doubt was there. It is when we discuss about prismatic societies, and in that case, when we discuss about various groups, means various parts of the group, parts of the society, do we take ruling elite along with the administration or the mass, or we delete administration in that prismatic society? Actually, it is a little bit confusing for me that in a prism there are various facets in a prism, and in those prisms we find that at the top ruling elite would be there. But what in case of the facets, do we take administration only or the mass along with that?
REITs, very good question, very good question. Thank you very much, because you give me the opportunity to make it detailed, particularly during my presentation. REITs use the term clique and elite. That is elite and clique. That is elite and clique. Elite in English, not French. If you come to English, you get elect. So clique and elect, that is elect is a democratic term, elected people, and clique is of course the traditional term, doing some hobnobbing with things. So this is a clique. Now, in every society, it's not that elite and mass continuously in the prismatic society, they continuously change their position. I mean, let me just make a joke first on a lighter side. One of my colleagues long back told me that I always salute even the Charudars of in our university. I said, I was smiling to him, and he said, because who knows that he can become the prime minister tomorrow. He can be the chief minister tomorrow. So in a prismatic society, elite and masses, they form a clique. That today the mass somehow, for the sustenance of the elite, they need the values of certain values, which are in fact in those values, these elite people, they do not believe. But still for the sustenance of their elite position, they will have to support those values. So a position, I mean, it was like Jinnah. Jinnah was a very secular man. He was never religious in private life, but he was very religious in public life. So that way, the elite people who are not at all religious, they became very much religious, and they became they become uh, allied with the masses, or uphold the values of the masses, not alliance. I mean, I'm talking about the upholding of values of the masses, which are not being upheld by them. So that way, it's in a prismatic society, ruling elite and mass, they mix up with each other in such a way that sometimes mass, they do not, they propose certain values, or they uphold certain values which are being adopted by the ruling elite, although they do not support that values. That is the point. What I want to tell that in elite theory, it is called that there is a fair consensus among the regarding the values among the elites, but it's not that in case of prismatic society. In prismatic society, the elite people, or in many cases, they do not support the values, but they uphold those values. You can find that religious values are being upheld by the people. They don't believe in the religion in many cases, but they do that because masses uphold that. This is the clique and elect. They continuously mix up with each other, and that way prismatic society is you cannot elite society. If you apply elite society, you have to apply it with caution, because elites they do not have a consensus about the values in the society. They do not share the values, or fairly there is no consensus in values which the elites will uphold. In fact, sometimes they uphold the values which they do not support, and sometimes they do not support the values which they are really believing. So that is the way prismatic society operates. Thank you very much.
Sir, one thing I wanted to ask, if we cannot differentiate between the masses and the elite, then is there a similarity between prismatic society and Pareto's theory of circulation of elites?
Pareto talked about the circulation of elites, but that circulation of elites was, in fact, it's very slow. First thing is that elite theories talked about circulation of elites, but this changing in most cases, the elites change their position. Circulation of elite means the cultural elite, Amitabh Bachchan comes in politics. It's a circulation of elites. He changes his position from cultural elite to political elite. But it's not, I mean, masses, they do not come to the elite position. That is the first thing. So that way, it is true that circulation of elites is there, but that circulation mostly is mostly goes around one elite position, cultural elite position, to economic elite position to Goenka comes to politics, or Goenka comes to film. So he changes his position. That is circulation of elites. But it's true that in certain cases, or very slowly, social mobility is done, but that is very slow. I mean, it's not that poor people or enmassed people, they are always left out. From their position also comes to it, but that becomes, that is so slow, that is, in fact, elite theories do not rely on this circulation. They rely more on horizontal circulation, not vertical circulation. That is.
Thank you.
Sir, one more thing. Do we also include the bureaucracy in this elite level?
No,
Because no.
No, it's absolutely, because I gave that pyramidal diagram that there you can found that formulation elite, of course, policy formulation level, political elites are there, but then the Dyke says that this next level is
The
that
middle of that.
middle of that bureaucrats, the agencies of the government, they are elites. In fact, in most cases, bureaucrats are the main policy makers. I mean, these people, they
Delegated legislation.
hidden participants. You do not know them, but they provide everything, the knowledge, know-how. The politicians, they lack the know-how, but they have the knowledge. They have. That's why I was talking about. She's so profoundly knowledgeable person. So regarding environment or regarding gender, she provides certain policy and frames that policy and keeps it before the political level. After that, that is they are the think tank of the government. So they think, they draft the policy, and ultimately government with the value system of the situation, value system of the society, they accept certain policies, and after that, that is imposed. And whenever that becomes that comes in force, the bureaucrats, they are there to implement that. So that way they are implementing it as well as they are formulating it. So both ways they are very important for policy formulation system.
Anyone else from the students?
Sir,
Yeah.
can we say that group theory is more realistic, more relevant in today's society than elitist theory?
Can you say that group theory is more relevant in which society?
In today's society than the elite theory?
In which society you are talking of? That is very important. In fact, there are certain authoritarian societies, there are certain democratic societies, there are very authoritarian societies, authoritarian per se. So, which society? Both theories has relevance.
In democratic society.
In democratic society, if you talk about, of course, group theory has got more relevance. More relevance, of course, because in democratic society, not a single group remains in power for long. So it changes its position. Locus of power changes, and it's in a short term. I mean, it's not that not like elite theory that after long it changes. It changes very in a short term manner. After 5 years, 6 years, it changes the position. They change the position. So that way, in fact, pluralist theory, group theory talks about pluralism. And pluralism is basically the theory of democracy. In democracy, we'll have to think about pluralist attitude. So you'll have to be flexible. You'll have to be, you cannot be very rigorous, rigid regarding a certain thing. So that way you can think that in democratic society, pluralism, you're right. You told that group theory is more relevant than elite theory. Yes, of course, that is true. In democratic society, group theory is more relevant than elite theory. Any other question?
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Oh, please, please.
So, sir, my question is about elite theory, elite class. And you talked that, don't you think that the question of elite rule or minority rule is kind of inevitable? That even if there is a majority rule, at some point there would be some person that goes ahead and gets power. And once you taste power, you don't throw it away and you hunger for more.
You have talked about, I mean, Mitchell's idea on raw oligarchy. So basically, you reflected the ideas by Robert Mitchell's that I don't know oligarchy. That's true. After a certain time in any organization, it's relevant. Relevant, of course, in democratic society, group theory is more relevant. But if you tell me which is more useful, I will tell anything is more useful. Relevant is, of course, this one, but useful is elite theory. In every organization, after a certain time, you can find that some people go ahead and they take the leadership, and without whether it is in communist society, communist organization, or in religious organization, or in democratic party, uh, Mamata Banerjee's party, or Sonia Gandhi's party, or Modiji's party, whoever may be that. Someone who's, and he has got a group of people who become the basic policy formulation, the basic group of policy formulation, basic group of group which becomes involved in policy formulation in that particular political organization, whatever it may be. It may be political party, or it may be religious organization, or it may be any democratic society, for the whole nation as such. So that way, useful theory, of course, is more useful theory is elite theory. It's true that plate is there in our society. We'll have to think that elite is not that they don't they fairly they have a consensus, fair consensus about the values of the political society or religious society. But still then, some way, they uphold certain values which are at that moment makes an adjustment with the dominant interest of the masses. So that way, that's why religious has become a major part in both Bangladesh society and also Indian society, because large population, many people talk about that food, clothing, shelter, but religion, the common people, they have the major interest of being religion. So that way, it's true that elite theory is very useful in dealing with these societies, and in whatever nature of the organization is that, democratic organization or authoritarian is of course there. You'll find after some time the rise of certain group of people who in fact go ahead of other members, and they take the role of policy formulation for the organization, for the society, or for the institution as such.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Anyone else wants to ask something? Neena ma'am, if you want to say something.
Please.
Yeah.
Professor Neena, you please. No, you are.
Your mic is not.
Yeah.
Problem was that it was raining very heavily, so I could not listen. And somehow or other, both my systems, this and this also, somehow it was not working properly. I was reading the slides. Very good, very good. This is something which I very much wanted to know. And I will listen to the recorded thing.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, I'll share the recording with you.
Yeah. I don't want to miss anything of Mr. Bhattacharya. He's very good.
Professor
Very
Neena,
competent.
let me tell you, all the students, it's my pleasure that Professor Neena Joseph has, in fact, she has participated in this program. She has a checkered career as professor. So, but it's my honor that she is here to listen to my.
It is an honor for all of us, sir.
Oh, okay. It's my pleasure.
She's
I was
from Kerala.
always wanting to learn this public policy formally.
She's a gender specialist. She's a gender specialist.
We are honored with your presence over here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
You are an inspiration, ma'am, for all the students.
Yes, you are an inspiration for me as well, Professor
Yes,
Neena.
for all, for everyone.
That
Lifelong learning. So actually, I think we should have capsules. We talk about multidisciplinary disciplinarity. So actually, a senior professor should learn a bit of everything like this package. But this is not a bit actually. This is the whole subject. Very useful.
I hope tomorrow you'll be participating and then Vinita will be
Yeah.
there.
So
So
let me see. These rains are cheating. Heavy sounds.
Is it still raining heavily, ma'am, in Kerala?
No. It is now subsiding.
Okay.
No, but yeah, it was the when the lecture started at 5 o'clock onwards. It was very heavy rain.
You are in Trivandrum?
No, Kochi.
Okay, you are in Kochi. Okay. So anyone else? Any question before we close?
So tomorrow also Mr. Rabin's class.
no. Tomorrow Nivedita ma'am's class.
Nivedita ma'am. So, sir, suggest should we end now?
Yes, please.
Okay, Isha, please. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We're very grateful we got to attend this lecture and got to be a part of it. And it was very insightful, very interesting. Also, thank you to the participants for joining. I'm sure all of you had a great time. This was a very informative session. Thank you. See you all tomorrow.
You are welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. These
Thank
2
you.
days were very enriching for us, and we could understand public policy in this sense also. Elite theory and group theory was also the part of it. It could be only recognized today only by me.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Rabin sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.